This is an introduction to Catholic Lecture 71, which is the topic for June 2016, even though it's July as I'm recording this, titled Reality and Illusion. And what I like to do with these short videos is give you bits and pieces that aren't in the study guide itself and that might be useful to understand the context and why this lecture and how this concept fits in with the other concepts. So what occurs to me is that at some point I was studying with a wonderful teacher. I've had many wonderful teachers, wonderful teacher. And someone asked, why does it take 4 years? Now, substitute word of your choice or number of your choice. Why does it take 4 years to become a practitioner when so-and-so can teach me how to do something in 6 weeks? And my teacher said, oh, it doesn't take 4 years, it takes a lifetime. But if I advertised a class that said it would take a lifetime, nobody would join. So I tried to give you a modest amount of investment time that seems reasonable. But if you truly want to do this work, you will be improving yourself and working at this your entire life, getting better and better. I liked that answer. And I liked it because what he was saying is that there's no end to the learning, and learning is fun for me, and that practitioners can start practicing when they're competent. But competent and being masterful are two different things. And over the years, I've worked with groups that want their certificates to only be given to the equivalent of masters. Well, that's great, but who's going to practice? You know, we need to begin, we need to start, because it is our students, our clients, our work that informs us. When I teach a class, when I do a session, it's a failure unless I learn something. Now, it can be a success for the client. That's okay. But when it really sparkles, it's because they got something and I got something. Now, I don't usually share what I got. That's because it's about them. But by getting something back, I get better at explaining. I get better at understanding. I get better because my worldview is enlarged a little bit by hearing their story. So this work, whether it's for your own personal use or if you wish to practice it or include it in your practice, this work goes on forever. Now, we are, as a society, and speaking of specifically the United States, we are used to, you can have your certificate and practice in a weekend, in 2 weekends, in 3 weekends, in a year, etc. 4 years, 10 years. And that's true, you can practice. I just want to point out the word practice. So as you practice, you will get better. And there isn't a profession in the world that isn't improved by experience. Not that novices can't contribute something, but actually doing the work really informs you of what you need to know, what you need to do. Now, I'm speaking of me as a helper, but I'm speaking of using the pathwork for your personal work also. By practicing it, you get better at it. Now, that relates to this lecture, and I'll kind of explain why. When I chose this lecture, I realized that for the first time, I really wanted to do 2 months. I wanted to split this lecture in half. So to help create a framework for this, I superimposed a form developed, it's documented in my website, I'm not going to get into details, called the Fourfold Way. And the Fourfold Way goes, show up, pay attention, tell the truth, and stay open to the outcome. Now that's fairly simple, but I'm going to go back over and add a few words that they add. Show up, Pay attention to what has heart and meaning. Tell the truth without judgment or blame. And stay open to the outcome rather than attached to it. Okay? So in this last one, for instance, as a judge, if you had to determine something, you'd want to stay open to the facts rather than have a harboring of belief that the person is guilty or should be fired or whatever. That's what stay open to the outcome rather than attached to it means. Okay? So I saw this fourfold way, and I saw where I could split this in half and work on pay up, show attention, show up, pay attention, and then the other two the following month. So that's what I did. And then I took each one of these and I split them again into 2 weeks. So show up, I highlighted for 2 weeks. Now when I say a highlight, I just used it as a framing device. And I picked up quotes from this lecture and various lectures in relation to what it refers to as showing up. And then the next 2 weeks of June would be pay attention to what has heart and meaning. Okay? So right now I'm just going to talk about June. I'll do another video for July. Show up, pay attention. Oh, how easy. Next. What Pathwork offers to teach us is that you may be able to show up and pay attention in 99% of your life. But there's always 1% where you either don't show up or you don't pay attention. So the invitation here, I'm going to put this in popular terms, is that there's a 1.0 show up, which means my body's in the room. And that, by the way, is a major victory. If you're suffering from depression, or if you have substance abuse, or if you're traumatized, putting your body in a room with other people can be a success in and of itself. So there's showing up, and there's truly showing up. Being relaxed about it, being open, instead of being in the room, but so terrorized, so traumatized, that the rest of the fourfold way can't happen. So the Pathwork invites you to consider not how many ways you do show up. Congratulations, great, enjoy it. What one place in your life do you not show up? What do you avoid? Where in your life do you find yourself showing up but actually being invisible energetically? You're physically there, but you're not energetically there. So the invitation here is to look at your life and see where that is missing. So I'm teasing, but I'll say that's 1.0, showing up, putting your body in the room. And then there's showing up 2.0, which is I'm actually energetically, physically present and ready. Okay. Then there's part 2 of this June module, and that is pay attention to what has heart and meaning. Now, when I learned the fourfold way, I found that sometimes I could pay attention, but I was paying attention to too much. And yet I at least was paying attention. I was going through a very difficult time. And so I could pay attention, and that is a victory. I was attempting to hear and filter. And then there's pay attention to what has heart and meaning. And that means you need to discern. You need to filter. I used the word previously, but that was careless. In this place, a filter. Okay? So that you're not overwhelmed by everything, and you hear what's important in the moment. So you need to show up. You need to turn on the television, read the book, open the email, be in the presence of your friends, show up to the meeting. Show up, and then pay attention, and then try to enlarge that. Pay attention to what has heart and meaning. Now the question would be, what has heart and meaning? Well, that's for you to decide. But I don't know. Well, then we need to learn. We need to practice. And what you will find is that if you open up to something and you say, this has heart and meaning, and you focus on it, you may find it doesn't have heart and meaning. That's okay. You've learned something. So then you take a step back and you say, with my new knowledge that it doesn't have heart and meaning, what does have heart and meaning? And trial and error. It is my experience that most of human life is about trial and error. We get good at it. We're not 2, we're not 5, we're not 15. We get good at it. We figure out very quickly what not to do, what is not fluid, what is not meaningful, what doesn't support us. And we walk away from that. We continue to search for what does have heart and meaning for us at that stage of life. Now, the teasing about 1.0 and 2.0 is that what served us 3 weeks ago, 3 years ago, 3 decades ago may not serve us today. So the invitation in the Patrick Lectures, when it says, here's an exercise, is not that you can't do it in some places, but that you find the place you can't or won't or aren't doing it. And notice and see if you can improve that capacity to show up. Improve the ability to pay attention to what is heart and meaning. And see if that additional skill will help you in the place you are now, in your current development, which is always different from the day before, the week before, the month before. So all of this was in Reality and Illusion, Patrick Lecture 71. And that's what I was trying to highlight by pulling it apart into different pieces. Also, what this does is this mirrors the original way of learning pathwork, which was for everybody to work together like one room schoolroom. And some people working at this level, and some people working at this level, and this level, and this level, who can all be around the same situation, but you may be learning at different levels. And we don't want to cast aspersions on someone who's not working at our level, and we don't want to shame ourselves when someone is working at a perhaps higher level that has a value judgment in it, but it's just trying to be descriptive. Someone's working at a higher level than we are. You can look at that and say, wow, I can be there. I just need to practice. I need to work at this a little bit. So that's what I was looking at in this lecture. And all of a sudden it came together. And I'll tell you when it came together, because it has to do with the lecture itself. I was doing a client with doing a client with a session. Obviously, it's a warm day, and I'm befuddled. I was doing a session with a client, and I found myself using this fourfold way that I learned 25 years ago when I started on my own personal spiritual path. And he said, how do you get there so fast? How do you know that? I said, well, I'll send it to you. So then I went online, and while I may have the information, I like to acknowledge the source. So I went online, and I found that I had never fully acknowledged the source. I never really knew the source of this fourfold way. So I got the information online, and I sent it to him. And then I thought, this has been a bedrock piece of guidance for me since my first therapist gave this to me 25 years ago. Maybe it has uses for more people. Maybe others can learn from this, because I have certainly learned an enormous amount from this simple 4-point program. And so I rolled it in with reality and illusion, which is actually a somewhat complex lecture, a little abstract, hard to get. So I was trying to make it more grounded, more present, easier to access for people. Now, the feedback from the 4 meetings that we had was that this worked. People got it, and they began to. It was an exciting 4 weeks. I was thrilled. And now we're in the next 4-week period in July 2016, and we're working with the last 2. tell the truth without judgment or blame, and stay open to the outcome rather than attached to it. I find that we're not talking about those things so much, but what has happened is people are going deep into the lecture and beginning to understand the very abstract and complex concept of duality. Now, there's a lecture on duality, Pathwork Lecture 143, Unity and Duality. I don't teach it directly because it's so abstract, it's hard to get around. It's easier to teach it one mouthful, one piece at a time. So I try to teach it, no matter what lecture I'm referring to, I try to slip it in on every single topic. But this time we've got a lot of duality, discussion, observation, reflection. So it's been an exciting 6 weeks. And I am considering using other frameworks, hoping to continue the idea of inviting people to take the lecture, take it into their lives, find out where it's useful, let it go where it's not useful, where it is useful, and tunnel in to a place that hasn't been looked at before. Now, we are all developing. And so today I am wiser about something than I was yesterday. That's just the nature of organic life. So what the lectures can offer is if you can find a place where you're weak, it can help you grow in that area, become more developed, more grounded, more knowledgeable about yourself, and that will help you move forward in many other areas. So, slight description of what the process has been over the last 6 weeks. The study guides are available on my websites. They're free to download. Then I have weekly notices that contain one portion of the 4 sections each month. And if you sign up for that, it's called the weekly notice, then you get 1/4 of the study guide every week to read on your own. And then if you wish, you can join a sharing teleconference that is online, available by clicking a link as well as by telephone. So thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy the lectures.